Welcome to Coffee with Chris. Our guest today, you may recognize him from his appearance on television from All in the Family, Laverne and Shirley, The Rockford Files, Dallas, The Howling, Jake and the Fat Man, Without a Trace, and his newest role of a very important film, just to name a few. He's an accomplished writer, author, and tap dancer, and a man who played Lloyd in the musical Boss at the Forum Theater in Chicago with Dick O'Neill, along many more. Please welcome Joe Bratcher. Thank you so much, and welcome to our show, sir.
Thank you, Christopher. That's the nicest introduction I've had in years.
Well, you know, there's so many projects from the 80s, I just couldn't name them all.
I looked at my face and it was a different human being who were in the All in the Families. That's when I first came out. After the Army, about 1976, 77 from New York City. So a few years ago. There you go.
It's amazing. You left the Army and you went right into film and television.
I did, but I was on a full scholarship ride to Northwestern for theater and film. And I took 5 years there because I'm hoping to get out of Vietnam. And I was not quite so lucky. I spent 3 years in the Army as a captain. And then what? Yeah, as soon as I get out of the Army, I got a tour, a national tour of No No Nanette. Probably never heard of that, but it was a wonderful year's tour. And then I went from there to Broadway, doing a Lorelei starring Carol Channing. And I did that for about a year. And my wife at the time was an agent. So I was very lucky. I got to do lots of commercials and, was a working actor for years.
Now, I love the story. Captain Bratcher is what I'm going to call you now moving forward. Thank you for your service. And it's amazing to have you here. It really is. Now, I want to talk to you about your tap dancing career. Not many people know this, but you're an incredibly accomplished tap dancer.
Well,
how did you become a tap dancer?
Bless my mother's heart. I was about 5 years old and I was very uncoordinated. And I would walk across the floor and trip. And she said, that boy needs help. And she put me into a class. And I can remember this just like it was yesterday. I was about 5 years old. And there were, back in that day, 20 people, 17 girls and 3 guys. So the teacher says, down, shuffle, step, step. And I could do down, step, shuffle, step, step. I mean, I didn't have to worry about it. And the room stopped. And the girls come rushing over to me going, oh my God, he can do step, shuffle, step, step. So I got all of this attention for doing something that somehow or other I knew how to do. So for the time I was 5, my first professional tap show was probably in the 7th grade, making a little money here and there. And then I went on to Northwestern and was in Gus Giordano's company. Paid, in shows in Chicago, at the Ivanhoe, Little Mary Sunshine. But yeah, tap and jazz gave me a career for many years. Thank you, Mother.
It's absolutely fabulous. Now, since you've been tapping since you're 5, is there a performance that you just didn't enjoy? What would have made that better?
What an odd question. The only time I feel absolutely comfortable thinking about nothing else. That's why I tap still every week now, because the world has gotten so crazy. The one place I've always been able to go and be in bliss is while I was dancing. So I mean, there's not one time I can remember that I wasn't. First of all, people were paying me to do what I loved, or they were giving me a scholarship to do what I loved, or when I was choreographing, I got to work with 25 or 30 people who understood it immediately. We all spoke a special language, and No, every bit of it. And then I've taken that experience, actually, it's very similar, and moved it into the writing experience and the acting experience, because it's all about trust and rhythm. And, you know, I don't know, there's not, I've been in the business now for 52 years, I think. I got my equity card 52 years ago. And, you know, there have been some sets I've been on that weren't the most pleasant, but even then you're getting paid for it. And they're, you know, let them yell. And no, I've enjoyed every moment of it. And now I get to work with other, you know, with younger people, bringing them into it. So no, I have no complaints at all.
You spoke about choreography, being a choreographer there for a moment. Is there any specific person or a choreographer in your lifetime that you've said, you know, this person I love drawing from them, or that influenced me?
There's two. The first one is Fosse. I mean, who's everyone's. If you ever saw the movie All That Jazz, that was my life in New York City. I would go to those auditions. I would dance in those shows. I was too tall and too large for Fosse, so I would go, and I would almost get immediately pushed out because I was too tall. And then if I made that up, it was just too large. There were other people, Joe Layton, on Broadway, that I worked with a lot. And, you know, once again, I mean, and then, you know, you start filtering it through yourself, you come up with your own work. I loved it. I mean, it was great fun. You have to, you know, direct and choreograph shows. And, yeah. This was all before Los
Angeles. Before you made it in the biz, eh?
Well, yeah, you know, things were going pretty well, and I was working in New York, so William Morris brought me out here to start doing pilots, because you were talking about All in the Families and the Burns and Shirleys. Well, that was, you know, when there was only 3 networks, and if you had enough talent and you had the right representation, you worked. You know, I mean, there was a place for journeyman actors to work. And once again, my ex-wife was an agent, so I did more than 100, maybe 150 commercials, which allowed us to eat. And then, you know, you would do the guest spot on Vern and Shirley. Oh, she just passed, and that was my Cindy, and that was my first kiss on. I played her boyfriend. And on Laverne and Shirley, I had my very first kiss. So she was quite wonderful. You know, it was, we were all so young. We were what, late 20s, early 30s. And there was a group of us that were all out here from New York City and working.
So did I hear you correctly that Captain Joe Bratcher got his very first kiss ever while he was on Laverne and Shirley?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it was, yes. I was her boyfriend, and she had a good time. We had a good time that night. And captain, I came out a captain. You know, I was a second lieutenant, first lieutenant, and then as I walked out the door, having finished my Army experience, I was then a captain. So I wasn't a captain long.
Hey, listen, doesn't matter how long. That's quite an accomplishment. It's amazing.
Yeah, because I was the only tap dancer in OCS, Officer Candidate School, and all I wanted to do was be on Broadway. But I was sloshing through the water and swamps of Georgia, and there you go, infantry OCS.
Wow.
I haven't thought about that in a while. Yeah.
With your experience tap dancing, what do you believe is the most important trait of a tap dancer?
Oh, I think I think a gift of rhythm and the ability to hear it, and then your feet does it. There's no there's no room for anything stopping between here and your ear and your feet, and then a joy. I mean, if you think about it, any of the tap dancers you've ever seen, they all look joyful and they look into the moment because, you know, they're having a ball. It's great.
That's fair. Is there a specific tap dancer that when you were growing up you looked to? I mean, we spoke about choreography. Is there a tap dancer that you had said, wow, I want to be like that one?
Well, when you're young and before you realize that you're not going to be this, Fred Astaire was always my. I mean, I couldn't believe what he did, and then when I got into the real world, my I probably did more like Ray Bolger, larger, character parts and things like that. Um, so yeah, I mean, uh, that's it. I think a Ray Bolger type, sure, that's fine. You know, once again, you went for so many auditions, and so many that you didn't make, but the ones you did make, well, you were also working. I was an actor, dancer, the singer, and so you auditioning for different parts, so you bring a little bit different for each, your movement or your whatever might, well, it will be changed by whatever part you're auditioning for.
That's really cool. You were an actor and a dancer, and then you also said singer. Was it jazz and hip hop that you were singing? Is there a specific genre or just the ability?
All musical comedy. Um, I mean, when I was working, I got to play the Palace, which was a dream of mine. That was a dream come true. And I was working with Carol, and in that show, I played a Frenchman, and that was dancing and singing and the French accent. I played an Englishman, which was dancing and singing with an English accent, and I played her father, all in one show, in a wheelchair. The father was, who had a New England accent. So yeah, and it was a wonderful show of great, great Julie Stein music. So yeah, I mean, once again, and you're getting paid for it. There's 3,000 people out there. And I hadn't been out of the army too long, so I was sloshing through the mud and the blood and the tears to tap dancing at the Palace.
Jeez. Now, when you started, your mother put you in tap when you were 5. Have you ever, and I'm going to assume the answer is yes to this, but have you ever tap danced for film and television?
Well, not it was mostly commercials back in the day. Now, I don't know if you remember, there was a commercial that was very successful. Wouldn't you like to be a Pepper too, Dr. Pepper, drink Dr. Pepper? I was in a couple of those. Not the main guy, but So yeah, you would audition a lot. Sure, I did some tap dancing for commercials. I don't think I ever did. I usually played a bad guy. I either played a bad guy or a lawyer or a doctor. And if you were lucky, you got 3 weeks on a soap, and then you did a Laverne and Shirley, and on the soaps, and you would get it every other year. The one time I remember, my best pal and I were both murderers, and they were coming after us. It was great, yeah, bad guys, a number of bad guys. That was great. And the Howling, my dear friend was Dee Wallace. So she calls up and says, come down and meet this guy named Joe Dante. You get a gig and you're playing somebody she's calling. It was like a week's work. It was great.
When you look back on your film and television, is there a role or a character that you would have loved to have played that you just didn't get the chance to?
Yeah, what happened now this is the old days, because it was all, you audition for pilots, and this, of course, is all face to face, and sitting there would be the director, the writer, the producers, and the network people. And then if you were lucky, you would get chosen to do a pilot. And and then so you would do 30 minutes, and then you would be on hold for 2 months.
Wow.
Right? And let's say of all the networks, there were maybe 50 to 100 pilots made, and they would pick up 10, 12. And I was in one. The one I wanted was a thing called Tabitha. Tabitha was the daughter of the Wist, and it came, very, very close. We did another pilot. It was between us, my Tabitha lady, and the guy who got it, and came down to within the last 24 hours. So
Wow.
you think, and then you go back to being a journeyman actor. But and you can't do another job while you're on hold for the pilot. So that there's a 2-month hold in there while you're waiting.
So why is that? If you're put on hold and you don't know if you're going to get it or not, why can't you take on other work?
Oh, because they don't want you. You're under. I can't remember. They must have paid us something, but they want you available in an instant. And if you go to do something else, then that may interfere with the character that you're playing. It may not, it may not be in the same wheelhouse or whatever. So I mean, you understood it. I don't even think you could, because I got to do some movies, and which was a whole different animal. But the television was, there was a lot of network power, people looking over your shoulder. It wasn't like theater in New York. It was very different.
When you talk about that experience between, film being a different animal than television and theater, if you had to go back and say this is the one that every young actor or actress needs to be starting out in, where would you tell them? Would you say, hey, start in theater to learn something, a different skill set, and move your way through film and television, or do you think anyone can just kind of jump into any industry?
No, I don't. Well, there's always exceptions, and there are people who never had a class in their life, and they're at the right place at the right moment, and they get the job, especially in television and film. But since I was at Northwestern majoring in theater and film, so my background was all theater, and people have asked me that, young people, that's a wonderful foundation, because you can take whatever you learn. Now, acting for TV and film is different, but it's the same muscles. You have to, first of all, you have to be smaller, cameras right here, there's not 12,000 people out there, 12,000, 1,200 or 20. And then when you came out to Los Angeles, there was improv, which was a really good way to funnel yourself from the theatrical experience to the film and television experience. And it really was. When I was doing it, you went to New York, you got all your union cards. You got your equity card, and they would shoot a commercial, so you get a SAG card. So when you arrived out here with an agent, hopefully a good agent, and then so that your auditions were for good parts, and you were ready. I mean, you had there was nothing you couldn't do, or at least that's what you thought. You were 29, 30. There wasn't anything. Can you ride a motorcycle? Absolutely. No, you never. Then you go and you learn how to ride a motorcycle. So you never said no. Can you ride a horse? Absolutely.
Let's see what happens. Why not?
How you figure in a week you can learn how to. Fortunately, I was raised in Oklahoma, so I knew how to ride horses, which gave me a lift up, actually. I could, did a couple of westerns and stuff like that.
Now, you had mentioned a couple of times just in passing here, a good agent. In your opinion, what makes a good agent versus somebody else, I guess?
Well, I was married to one for 13, 14 years, so I also have that knowledge of it. I was very lucky, once again, that within a week after I was in New York City, I signed with William Morris. Well, William Morris and ICM were the best. And it gives you a certain cachet. They can get their clients into the most important, auditions. And if I was with George Abbott's daughter. Her name is Judy Abbott. George Abbott was the king of the world in New York City. His daughter was Judy Abbott. So she was my agent. She loved people in theater, and I mean, like my wife was 24 hours a day. They really cared about their clients. They were working on their career, not about money, and very helpful, and it did make a difference. And you know, there were fine B and B plus agencies, but if you work, I mean, I just talked my way in. I just thought I'll go see William Morris because they should have me as a client. I mean, you know, I just got out of the army. And I walked up to the gate. I mean, you couldn't do this now. They'd probably shoot you in New York City, and told the secretary that I think I should see Judy Abbott. And within 10 minutes, I was upstairs talking to Judy Abbott, and I signed with her that day because, you know, but I went to Northwestern, on Broadway, you know, all the pieces come into place. But yeah, you know, in the 22, 29, nobody can tell you can't do something.
I love that. You just knocked on the door. No, I think you should be my agent. Let's have this meeting.
That was it. Well, my best buddy had just signed with ICM, and he couldn't get me a meeting with his agent. It was one of the big. I thought, well, wait a second. If he got with ICM, I'll be with William Morris. And, you know, and they got you work. I mean, that was the other thing. And the big agencies, you had an agent for theater, an agent for commercials, you know, and they all talked to each other. It was wonderful.
So when you were in these movies playing the bad guy in television theater, what was that preparation for the audition like for you? What was kind of your process to get you ready?
Well, you ask 10 different actors, and they'll have different. My process was, first of all, I loved being the bad guy. For me, it was not a lot of studying. I read it and I memorized it, but not so that, you know, not completely. But there's a part of me that's a bad guy. You know, Joe isn't, but, you know, mostly a good guy. You know, so it was, and then, you know, your whole body changes, and you're in that moment. You know, that's part of the reason I love to work with writers so much, because you have to get inside their skin. So this was Joe Bratcher, you know, idea of what, you know, and then the environment changes because of the script and all that. But a bad person they don't think they're bad. Right. I mean, you know, you play. Listen to me, because you play their truth. You know, you don't sit there and go, "Oh, I'm playing a bad guy." It's just say the words, and you know their intention, and all of a sudden, you know, you're playing a killer. You know, yeah. And I loved playing bad guy because you could, you know. I mean, there's a part of me that would love to be that kind of intimidating, you know, powerful, prideful person, but only a part of me. But then, you know, and the bad guy, and people got to be afraid of me. So
a good guy on the outside, a bad guy on the inside.
No. Yeah. So I didn't believe in much preparation. That, for me, got in my way. It became all about the preparation. And I loved auditions. You know, you walk in, you schmooze with them, and you read the room, you know. And especially back in the day, now it's on tape. But, you know, you give it your best shot. And if you're comfortable, and they can see you, but if you're comfortable, and then they give you a couple of suggestions, then you take their suggestions, and are you good at that, you know? And yeah, because, you know, it's fun. You know, and you might get the job. Odds are you won't, but you might. Yeah.
So with the world of never-ending auditions, never really having any closure about why you didn't get a role, I mean, now everyone runs to a version of social media. I got the job, I didn't get the job, my life is over type of attitude in some instances. Back in the day, you didn't have this technology. So when you didn't get that callback, when you didn't get the part, how did you deal with that rejection and no closure?
Oh, first of all, that's the business, and my word was next. I was very lucky. I went on. Oh, see, this is back in the day where you'd have to stop and put a quarter in the phone. I went on at least 9 auditions a week. Now, most of those were commercials, but there would be theatrical auditions, and you got 10 if you were working. Let's say you would get 10% of your commercial auditions. You just would. If you do 30 a year, 25. Now, not all nationals.
Right.
Some Minnesota National Bank. But once again, you were a working actor, and nowadays I still go out on auditions occasionally, especially pre-pandemic, and there would be 100 guys in the room who all were my age, older or younger, or when I first came out here, there would be 35 guys in that room.
Yeah,
All those 35 guys, and if they got that job, well, then they couldn't have a job. You're next.
okay.
So, and I never took it personal. I never took it personal. And, some of it hurt more because if you'd have gotten it, but then if I had gotten a number of those jobs, I wouldn't be sitting here schmoozing with you about what it was like. And the fact that I had my wife and all my friends, we were all in the same boat. It was like when Gopher got what was see, my dead brain comes up with the boat, and he hadn't worked in months. So you would get a job and you take all your friends out to dinner because there were times that there were sometimes months that you didn't work. But, next.
So in your opinion and experience, what are some common mistakes that young people in the industry are making that you just kind of look at and you're like, that's a rookie mistake?
I think they come into it not as prepared as they might be. And by prepared, I don't, one must take classes. I mean, one just must, unless you just does the luckiest person in the world. But also there's an emotional readiness. By the time I came out here, I'd been to, countless auditions. I'd been, and had heard that. So that was a part, I knew that was theater. And there's a different vibe, there's a different energy, it's more supportive, and so there's that. And then you come out here, it's less supportive, it's more, well, it just has different rules to it, and you find out that you didn't get it after somebody else got it, and you hear from somebody else that you didn't get it because you don't get called to tell you didn't get it. It was tougher. So I think, having that tough skin, and being in it for the long run. If this is what I'm talking 50 years ago now. So I've been very lucky. Was never a civilian. A civilian job. And some kind of business for over 50 years. Member of 4 unions. And it's been wonderful. And I'm still having a ball. And, somebody asked me the other day, when are you going to retire? And I would retire from what? Retire from anything. But you do you get the face plant, you get bad news, so you face plant for a day. The life. But then you have to get up to that next.
I like that next.
Yeah, and the difference between my friends I call them civilians because they have a job and they get up in the morning and they get a paycheck, and that must be wonderful. I mean, they live well and they're lawyers and all this stuff, and I don't know what that means. I've never had a regular paycheck. It never bothered me. I figured it. But this thing that we're doing now, the way I know you, this was just a total fluke, and it's been going on for 32 years.
Wow.
This writing, yeah, that's 32 years, and we did it because WGA went on strike. Go figure.
It's crazy that you have these, the tough skin attitude when we have this world of instantaneous success or posts or likes or pokes, whatever you want to call them. And not a lot of people know how to handle that rejection, much like yourself or others in it. And I like what you said. You're either in it for the long haul or you're not. And if you can't handle the rejection, then you're definitely in the wrong spot.
No, it's the journey. I mean, it's absolutely the journey. If you get in and thinking you're going to be a star or going to make a big living, well, then you're in the wrong place, because this is about being an artist. And like working with, I think I'm working now with about 60 writers every week, 60 artists, and the only ones I've never advertised or anything. It's always been by recommendation. And the people who stay, some of them have been with me for 25 years, are in it for the journey. There are a few of them that have made it big, and you can't get them on the phone anymore because they're just too busy and they're making way too much money in TV and film. That's wonderful. But they were there for the journey. And one fortunate day, somebody read their script or they met somebody, and on Monday, you couldn't get them on the phone because they'd signed with the best agency. And now it's all about managers. All about managers. Because I had done that too. My manager would handle Sally Struthers, Eileen Brennan, and me.
You're the biggest name on that list that you just gave.
Oh no, Eileen Brennan was big theater, and then she was Private Benjamin. She was the main sergeant, and Sally Struthers was all in the family.
Jeez.
So I don't know how I got into that.
I love everything that you're saying. It's if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life.
Well, absolutely. I mean, and the best people in this world is in our business, and the worst. And you have to make sure that you don't hang around that bad energy, or listen to them, because the worst of us has come out as being artists. Most of us are kind and supportive and incredibly talented. That's what when I work with 60 people a week who keep me sharp because they're so talented, all right, it's great. I have to learn new music I don't know anything about, because and also I've had to keep up with the new like you say, Twitter and all the electronic, which that's part of the business now. You have to learn that. You have to learn how to manipulate and be in charge of your own career by using all of the different venues.
Yeah. I have time for one last question for you. Captain Joe Bratcher, what makes you smile?
Listening to the people writing good work in this room right here, because it'll be from out of nowhere, and I will scream. They laugh. I will scream at laughter, because it's totally unexpected. That and Galaxy Quest. Those are the two things that I always rely on. Galaxy Quest if I'm feeling a bit blue. Do you know that movie?
I do know Galaxy Quest. That's definitely a throwback with Oh man, he played Tim the Toolman Taylor,
Oh yeah.
and
Well,
there's a gentleman, Mitchell, Cool Mitchell, who was in there as well.
oh yeah. And it was so much like what we did back in the day. Oh yeah. No, it's been wonderful. I really appreciate our having coffee. If we had just had coffee, it'd have been great.
This is perfect. Again, thank you so much, Captain Joe Bratcher, for joining me today on Coffee with Chris. Everyone out there, have a fantastic day and smile
Absolutely.
to inspire. Thank you so much.
Thank you.